What's good, party people? We're getting another Navia rerun, and with each rerun she gets, there's one question that gets stronger. Is Navia immune to power creep? I think it's a valid question with so many DPSs of different elements being powercrept or having strong alternatives, but Navia still feels like she's in a league of her own for Geo DPSs. We're gonna look at a timeline of how Navia's improved since her release, and she was already strong, and we'll use it to inform us on how to build her in her teams for 5.6, including a Scoffia, and if she can do anything for Navia. So, Navia's skill deals one big instance of Geo damage and converts her normal attacks into Geo. Her burst deals a bunch of instances of Geo damage. She gets a stack for each crystallized shard picked up, and she can hold a skill to consume the stacks, just like the Primordial Sea consumed Melusan Silver. When you release this skill, she'll deal an even bigger instance of Geo damage. Long story short, play with characters that leave their element on the enemy, ideally characters that apply a lot of that element, then apply a bunch of Geo to make shards, hold a skill to consume them, and release to shit them back out for big damage. She was strong on release but didn't have too many teammates, which reflects her story and lore because they all got flooded in Poisson. Luckily for her, she made some new friends since she launched and she forgot about some of the old ones, so let's look at these changes. When Navia released, she was a solid damage dealer. She had no issues clearing all content in the game and had options for different teammates. A lot of people considered her best team on launch to be one with Xiangling, Zhongli and Bennett. Only issue with that team, in my opinion, is that those characters were all overused by 4.3 when she released. It was boring playing them in every other team. The patch before Navia came out, we got Farina. Pairing her with Yelan and then throwing one of Zhongli or Bennett into the mix meant you had 3 different characters buffing Navia as well as 2 others dealing big damage. There was also the option to run Xingqiu and Beidou together in place of a sustain unit, then throw Fischl in there for some energy. This meant there were 4 different damage dealers in the team, and in my opinion, that team's still one of the most fun Navia teams to play. 4.4 saw the release of Xianyun, who turned almost everyone into a plunge DPS. Running the pair with Farina and then one of Zhongli or Bennett meant you had plenty of damage, buffs, and sustainability given the fact the team has 2 sustains. The second sustain unit was more of a flex option though, and you could go with Yelan if you'd prefer. She gives Navia a damage buff, deals her own damage, as well as HP from a Hydro Resonance to Farina and herself. Chiori came out a patch later and could either fill the flex slot in the plunge team, or she could be used in place of Zhongli in the team with Bennett and Xiangling. Going with Chiori means you lose Zhongli's resistance shred, but you gain more off-field damage and she has better particle generation. Albedo already does this, just not as good, and enemies often destroy his flower construct, sending it to meet Melusan Silver, whereas Chiori's dolls won't do that. There's a content creator who goes by the name of Jamie. If you're not following him, punch yourself in the face. He pointed out that a lot of the player base, myself included prior to his videos, overlook crystallized shard generation. I think that's a good point, so it's one that I want to echo here. Navia wants crystallized shards for stacks on a skill because them stacks really help her reach for a ceiling. Chiori's great for crystallized shard generation and overall makes her contribute more to the team than Zhongli was. We didn't get anything else for Navia from the rest of Fontaine, but once Natlan dropped, she had a surprising number of new additions to the game that pushed her to a higher level. This is encouraging given the fact DPSs usually go the opposite direction and just fade away. Firstly, there is a new support set in Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City. It buffs the elemental damage of a team for whichever elements are involved in reactions triggered by the holder. Elemental damage is buffed by 12% unless the holder is from Natlan, in which case elemental damage is buffed by 40%. In order to have someone to give the full 40%, we all got a free copy of Kachina, who just so happens to be a nice free-to-play option in Navia teams. She's Geo, which means she buffs Navia's Geo damage. She deals off-field Geo damage on tick, meaning she generates crystallized shards for Navia's skill. She functions well at C0 and can hold Favonia's Lance if the team has high energy requirements. While getting a free-to-play support to hold 4-piece scroll was nice, 5.1 yeeted Kachina off a mountain with the release of Shalonen. Shalonen heals so she can be the sustain, but she also shreds the opponent's resistances by 36% for whichever elements are in the team, Anemo and Dendro aside. A downside Jamie made people aware of is that a crystallized shard generation isn't as good as Kachina and Chiori's. The shred will make up for it though and push Navia's ceiling even higher. Also, if you have Shalonen's weapon, that's going to give the team an extra 25.6% elemental damage. Another Natlan character Navia can synergize with, who also just so happens to have dead homies of her own, is Moika. She can fulfill the Xiangling role of off-field pyro damage, requires no energy recharge to do so, has a nice nuke on her burst, She even has a damage buff for Navia on her burst, but it does decay over time. Her being a Claymore is also a positive for those running her with Wolf's Gravestone because it buffs Navia's attack. And the newest unit that does anything for Navia is Escoffia. Navia is not going to be in Escoffia's best teams given the fact she's the wrong element, and Escoffia is not going to be in Navia's best either, but there is some synergy. Firstly, let's say you go with a trio like Navia, Farina and Yelan. Bennett buffs Navia but doesn't do anything for the others. Escoffia on the other hand is going to do less for Navia, but in this team will shred the opponent's Hydro and Cryo resistance by 15%. She's also dealing decent damage off field and doesn't have a limit to her healing like Bennett does. That's not the biggest benefit in the world, but for situations where you take a lot of damage at once, it can help being at 100% HP instead of 70%. Having Escoffia's signature weapon is also going to give Navia 32% attack for 3 seconds after she's healed. This is useful with a lot of the damage being front-loaded. The final additions to the game that have helped Navia since the release are weapons, so we'll use this to lead into the video's weapon section. The Natlan craftable Earthshaker has a high base attack, a high secondary stat of attack, and gives 32% skill damage when a pyro reaction is triggered by a party member. Fruitful Hook has the same attack stats but increases plunge attack crit rate and damage by 32%. Kenichi's weapon has a massive 741 base attack, gives 11% crit rate as well as 10% skill and burst damage for each stack the holder has. If you can hold 6 stacks at once, you get a stack after using each skill as well as free when a party member triggers burning. It's not common to run Navia in burning teams, but let's say you were running Navia, Emily, Mawika and Shalonen for example. This would be an amazing weapon on Navia in those circumstances. Mawika's weapon has the same base stats as Kenichi's, but instead of having the niche requirement for skill damage, it gives 20% crit damage and 28% attack for 6 seconds after using skill or burst. The duration increases after normal attacks deal elemental damage, which Navia can easily trigger. You don't want to pop a burst early in rotations though, otherwise you might lose the buffs by the time you get back round to Navia. Those are the new additions since she released, but upon release, and still today, her signature is best with a base attack of 674, 22% crit rate, 20% attack, and 36% skill damage. Dia's weapon is a good option too, giving 608 base attack, 33% crit rate, 20% attack after a skill hits, and another 20% attack after she takes damage. Serpent Spine's a solid option as always, and the Fontaine craftable Tidal Shadow gives a lot of attack in teams with a healer. Her best artifact set, Nighttime Whispers, is craftable now, which is appreciated given the fact it's not a domain many people found, with the other set in there not being a popular one. If you don't have a good set, you can run Marishosei in Farina teams. If not, 4P's Golden Troop works, but you miss out on 25% skill damage when she's on field for more than 2 seconds, which a second skill won't be able to take advantage of without losing the crystallized stacks. Overall, I was a little critical of Navia when she first came out. She was strong, but I didn't feel like she had enough teams. Now with all the additions we just talked about, she's a genuinely meta unit. Flexible, works at C0, can hold strongbox artifacts for newer players. I can understand people's reluctance to pull on rerun DPSs, but I feel Navia has some staying power. She's not going to get washed away like Malus and Silver, and drop in showcases for Escoffia and Aether teams when they're out. Subscribe to the channel if you're interested in those, and take it easy.